Welcome to the Action Lab Leadership Podcast, the show where we have honest, unfiltered conversations with business leaders. I'm Danny, founder of Action Lab Leadership, and today we're joined by Ed Golebiowski, the owner of Zero Gravity Adventure Park. Ed, welcome to the show.
Hi, Danny. Thanks for having me.
I want to start this where I always do, and it's talking about the concept of leadership. It's a big word that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. How do you define leadership, and what does it mean to you to be a leader in an organization?
So, when I look at leadership, I look at primarily leading by example. I'm fortunate enough where I have some teenage boys that actually work for me at the park. So I want to basically be the type of leader that they would look up to as a father, but also as a boss. So I think leadership is very important, setting the standard, setting expectations, and knowing that your employees share in your vision.
Well, let me ask you about that since you have two sons that work at the venue with you. Is there a boss work mode Ed and an at-home Ed? Are you a different person in both places, or are you kind of the same but have different expectations with how you interact with your kids? Because a lot of people who are watching or listening to this may also be in a family business, and I'm curious how you approach that.
Yeah, I definitely do. Today is a great example where it's just me and my son that's here. So I can let down the guard a little bit. And he does know that there is a difference between workplace ed and at home ed. There's a little bit of a filter that comes off when it's at home dad. So, but yeah, he understands the he understands the expectation or the change in role, but we've also discussed it too. So I let him know that, hey, when we're working together and we have other employees that are there, know that I'm not going to treat you any different than any of the other employees. If anything, it's going to be the opposite. My expectations of you are probably going to be higher than the other employees, which is not fair to you, but that's what I'm going to expect out of you.
Well, it's probably very good that you've communicated those expectations, because sometimes, whether it's working with a family member or in any other circumstance in life, we have an expectation of another person or of a department or of a team, but we assume they know our expectation. We don't actually share it, and we just hope they know. And there's a quote that I may not get exactly right, but it's something along the lines of uncommunicated expectations are premeditated resentments. And when we have an expectation of another person and we never share that, when they don't live up to it, which they can't because they don't know what it is in the first place, that we're setting ourselves up to be disappointed, or even in the extreme cases, to be resentful of that. Is that something that resonates with you as well from your experience?
Oh, I think so. I think that's absolutely valid. Absolutely valid.
You also talked about leading by example. And one of the things that jumps out to me is that when people say leading by example, I think that's only part of the story. Every single leader leads by example. But the question is it a good example or is it a bad one? For you, I'm assuming it's a good example. Knowing what I know about you, you're not going to be setting a bad example for your team. But specifically, in practical ways, what are the ways that you set a good example for your team? What are the behaviors or the characteristics or the attitude that you bring in every day to say, this is the standard that I expect from my team?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have a very customer first approach to my businesses, meaning that I want my management team engaging in the customers, not just from behind the counter, but out on the floor as well. So all my high touch areas of the park are very critical to me, like the front entrance, your first impressions. The staff knows that that's my pet peeve, that I want that area clean. I want the windows clean. I want to give the customers, when they first walk in the door, a good impression of the park. Um, Also, when we have our full Saturdays and Sundays with birthday parties, I love going out to each one of our party rooms and checking in with mom and dad, make sure everything is going good. Let them know that I'm here or my staff is here, I don't necessarily come out and advertise that I'm the owner. I don't like doing that. I don't feel like, I don't, maybe ego is a poor choice of words, but I just want them to know that there's someone here from management that thanks them for coming. And if you need anything while you're staying here, to please let one of us know, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent.
It's interesting because you had said you want your managers to get out on the floor and interact with customers, not just stand behind the counter. And it's one of those things that I think can be forgotten about in an FEC environment, really any brick and mortar stores. If you walk in and there's a front counter pretty close to the front door, and you've got 4 or 5 people that are working for you all standing there all together and they're not interacting with anybody and they're looking right at you, it's a very almost uncomfortable, intimidating thing for a customer. But if you can get them outside of walking from behind the desk and welcoming you in person and bringing you up, it changes the exchange of how that interaction goes.
It absolutely does. I mean, from a customer perspective and also from an employee perspective, because if management is out walking around and checking in with the staff, seeing how they're doing, making sure that they're not being ignored by just being on the floor and someone sitting behind the desk all night, that just creates a very good, in my opinion, a very good working environment all around.
Well, you
And
talked about
it's very difficult too, because in this business, at least with my business, and I'm sure it's very similar at other businesses, we hire a lot of first-time employees of kids that are in high school. A lot of times this is their first job or their second job, and they need a lot of coaching. And we have a young management team too, where it's not only am I constantly coaching our team members, but I'm also constantly coaching our management and to try to convey that vision of a customer first type approach.
Here's something that I've noticed because you're right. In this kind of a business, a lot of times employees this is their first job they've ever had. And right now with the current Gen Z that are in high school, they're the ones that you'd be hiring in their first job. A lot of them may never have been taught how to clean properly and how to do some of these things because they have parents at home who want to take care of things for them. And I'm not passing judgment about any of that. It's just the reality of what it is. But something really interesting that I've noticed in some FEC operators and business owners is they can get kind of resentful about that fact of like, yeah, these kids don't even know how to mop, or they don't know how to sweep, or they don't know how to do this. And I think that is it can be easy to get kind of cynical and resentful about that, but it's also
Sure.
our responsibility as leaders to teach them. The only way for them to learn it is by someone to teach it to them. And if they haven't learned it somewhere else, well, then it's our responsibility. How do
Right.
you view that responsibility? And is it something that you and your team approach with excitement? Do you approach it with trepidation, somewhere in between? What does that look like in your venue?
No, again, maybe this is a benefit of having my own boys work for me. Um, at the end of the night, you'll assign the tasks, or the management will assign the task of cleanup. And a great example is, I don't know of any 16-year-old that knows how to vacuum because they probably don't do it at home, right? And the way I approach that with someone is with a new employee, we'll walk through, do a general walkthrough, and I'll ask them, I won't ask them, have you ever vacuumed before? Because that's almost insulting. But I'll ask them, hey, have you ever used a commercial vacuum before? So that way it gives them an out to say, no, no, I really haven't. And all you're doing is just, hey, this is a basic vacuum. This is how you do it. This doesn't have a throwaway bag. It's a reusable bag. So you just kind of walk through, and it's all about coaching. It's all about how you present and explain that. Because if you go, like I said, you go to that kid and you say, hey, can you vacuum? Do you know how to do it? Like I said, it's almost insulting. So it's kind of the same way, whether it's cleaning bathrooms, wiping down windows. I mean, just simple things like that.
I like that change and reframe of the question. It's a small change, but like you said, it gives them an out so they don't have to feel like an idiot if the answer is no, because it's not your
Exactly.
intention. You're not trying to show them, well, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to vacuum. You're there to help. But if you can adjust the way that you ask that question, it changes the way that they respond. And I'm sure that even after somebody is trained the first time around or they're getting some reps underneath them, let's go with cleaning bathrooms as an example.
Sure.
I'm sure
Sure.
there are newer or first time employees that clean a bathroom and in their mind they did it right, and then you or a
Yep.
manager look at it and it is not even close. How do you go about that conversation of delivering that feedback and coaching them how to do it the right way without making them upset or defensive or anything like that? What does that kind of a conversation look like for you or a manager and an employee?
So bathrooms are, as we're getting further and further away from COVID, the message isn't as strong anymore. But, we went into the part of, hey, it's one thing to clean your bathroom at home, but with a commercial use, you want to make sure that everything is properly sanitized. So even though you may have done this at home, let's show you how we do it here to ensure that all these steps are taken. And just like everyone else, we just simply have a checklist of how to, when we have our cleanup sheets in the evening, or we do our hourly checklists inside the restrooms, we just go over in all the touch points, show them exactly where all the tools are, where all the spray bottles, the equipment is in the closets, and then literally show them how just to do it all the way. And again, it's more or less not from, we know how you know how to clean it, but we want to show you exactly how to do it properly in a commercial environment.
So let's take a step back. One of the things that I know about you, you've been in the family entertainment, roller skating industry, if you just kind of put a big umbrella on that, for a long time. I think it's maybe 3 decades at this point. But I know you had a period of time when you left the entertainment world to go into corporate America, and you took a job that was a very high paying job in corporate America, and you worked your way up and you were successful, but not necessarily happy and fulfilled, and you had eventually made a decision to come back to the entertainment industry. Walk us through what led to that decision, and did it take a lot of guts and courage to say, here's this really, I don't know if it was a cushy job, but I'm just going to use that as a descriptor. Here's this cushy corporate job that's paying me really well. Did it take courage to walk away from that, to bet on yourself again, to get back in the entertainment business? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so when I left in the early 2000s, I was working for a family that had a couple of roller rinks. And at that point, the owner wasn't ready to retire, and I wasn't interested in marrying his older daughter. And if I wanted to marry his younger daughter, I would probably have an ankle bracelet and be on the registry. So that wasn't an option either. So, I just kind of felt like I was at my ceiling, right? So I decided to go into corporate America and give it a shot. So I went into financial insurance, and then was working for a large insurance company for about, say, 18 months. And then I went into brokerage. And I excelled quickly to the point where I was running a division, and I had 23 people reporting to me along with some support staff. It was great. It was high paying. It was Monday through Friday, 7 to 3. It's exactly what what you'd think it would be. Um, but at the end of the day, it was unfulfilling. It was great money, but it was repetitive. Um, and for me, with my drive, in the sense that I'm probably the oldest 15-year-old you'll ever meet, I was bored with it. So we were at, and we had, the perks were amazing. My wife and I got to do 2 vacations a year because of all the miles that I've earned. I mean, it was great. But I sat down with her and I said, I hate this. This sucks. And at that point too, we had our oldest was 4 years old, and it was to the point where I was gone about 2 to 3 weeks a month, um, doing some recruiting myself to bring into our firm. And it was the check in over Skype, Dad, you have to leave again. And I thought, all right, that's kind of the edge where it tipped me over. And I got together with my wife, and I got back together with the family that had the skating rinks. And they had offered me a position to come back. And I thought, first of all, you're out of your damn mind. I'm going to trade in 7 to 3 for evenings and weekends again. But at the same time, being back in the entertainment space, allowing myself to be creative again in marketing and promotions, and building something, was a lot of fun, and it drew me back in. And after a long conversation with my wife, she said, this is what you're really good at. So this is something you should chase. So with her support, we jumped back in, and the rest kind of snowballed into COVID happening, the owner of the entertainment or the owner of the rinks dying unexpectedly, and then the opportunity with zero gravity that came along, and I just jumped at it. So
Seizing
it's been
opportunities.
it's been a ride.
It will continue to be a ride. And that's the thing is you know, we never know what's coming next. And there's always new opportunities that are presenting themselves to any leader. And that I think entrepreneurs, one of the things that can be a struggle is entrepreneurs see opportunity absolutely everywhere.
Right.
And it takes a skill to know what opportunities are worth pursuing and which ones are merely a distraction. And so, as you've had opportunities that you see out in the world or that pop up on your end, how do you differentiate between this is a thing I really need to go after versus this is a distraction, set it aside, and focus on the business in front of me that I have?
So I think a lot of it, I'm either on to something or on something here, because when I decided to go to the adventure park route, I really should have stayed in the wheelhouse of roller skating because I've cut my teeth on that. I know that. In my market in the Twin Cities, there's 3.5 million people, and there's two skating rinks. So huge opportunity for growth there. But instead, I decided to jump into the adventure park space where there's 18 other locations where now we're oversaturated. And it's every franchise, every larger franchise is here, and only one of maybe three independents in the market. But again, you know me well. I'm always up for a challenge. So I thought, no, I'm going to take the hardest road possible because to me, it's going to be the most satisfaction at the end of the day when I succeed.
Speaking of challenges, one of the things that leaders, the best leaders, are always doing is growing in skills and expanding. Right now, when you look at your leadership skills and the qualities that you have, are there any that you find maybe are weaker than you want to be that you're really focused on trying to improve right now? What does that look like for you and how you're trying to become a better leader in your organization?
Yeah, I will be first to admit, I mean, I am never done learning. I'm always learning. I always like going to and crashing shows that I have no business being in, like the Bowl Expo. To me, it's about networking, meeting people, and learning from the best. Um, where I believe I'm strongest in the promotional side, the vision side, looking down the road. But of course, my fault, if you want to have, if I'm going to identify one, is really on the operations side. I'm not the sit behind the desk guy creating spreadsheets. I mean, I do that, but that's not my strongest point. Where I need to have a strong management team is someone that can execute what my vision is and what my direction is.
Yeah, it reminds me, and of course, sometimes I think of a concept that I've heard before, and I'm struggling to recall the exact words. But it's you need in any business a visionary and I believe an executor are the two words that I'm trying to think about. And it sounds like right now you're more of that visionary. You have the long term vision of where you want your company to go. You've got the big ideas, and you have the kind of big energy and juice of getting to that point, but you're not necessarily the one, let me implement the day to day to make that happen. I want to focus on that, and I want someone else to kind of be here in the now to execute on this to make that possible. Would that be a good descriptor of kind of where you're at in the business?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not terribly weak in operations, but let me put it this way, it's not my strongest point. If you put me down in a room and told me, hey, we had role A or role B, which one are you going to succeed in the best? It's always going to be in that vision, that marketing, that promotion side, rather than being, in the trenches, if so to speak, on the operations.
Do you rely on your management team on the operational trenches to be able to carry the bulk of that load so you can spend more time on the visionary side, or are you still kind of equal footed in both worlds?
It depends on I'm getting more into that visionary side, but I wanted to learn this adventure park business first. So I forced myself to go down that road because I feel like I want to master that, or at least get a good handle on that. So that way I know exactly what my thresholds are as far as what I can push on the marketing side.
One of the other things I know about high achievers and leaders is that they tend to be their own harshest critics. So I'm sure when you say I'm a little weaker on that, you're probably a lot better than maybe you're giving yourself credit for. But you know where your biggest strengths are and you know where your enthusiasm lies. And it sounds like that's more on the promotions and the vision side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've a lot of my peers tell me I'm way too hard on myself, but that just allows me, maybe that's a mental thing for me, that it just keeps me focused on wanting to do better every time.
Well, and that's something that's interesting because you and I have had similar conversations to this in the past through the mastermind. But I think we can always want to get better, and we can also at the same time be able to give ourselves credit for what we're doing well. I think what happens a lot of times with a lot of people is all they focus on is, I got to get better, it's not enough. I got to get better, it's not enough. And they never give themselves any credit or celebrate anything along the way. And then they wonder why they're burnt out and miserable after a certain period of time. It's like, well, because nothing's ever been enough. It's like we have to be able to celebrate and recognize, hey, this went well, celebrate, and then move on to getting better. But it's that
Yeah.
celebration part that's so important.
Yeah, I think, that's one, if I had to say one thing that I've missed from corporate America is as an independent or as a small business owner in this space, even though we belong to multiple associations, right? It's very difficult, or it's almost, you don't see peers recognizing each other like you do in corporate America for their accomplishments. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not everyone is ever going to win a brass ring award, so I mean that's a pretty high. I mean that's kind of like the top of Mount Everest, right? If you get that. But it's always something to strive for. And it doesn't drive me. I mean, peer recognition doesn't drive me, but it does fuel the fire. No doubt about that, right?
Well, I wonder if what you just described is a result of the size of the businesses. If we assume corporate America, if there are thousands of people in a business, they all understand the same business, they're all rowing in the same direction, and they can recognize when someone in that business is doing a great job and give them a shout out. Whereas most FECs, I mean, if we think about the average FEC probably has between 70 and 125 employees, somewhere in that range, right? Depending on
Sure.
the size. That's not so, it's much, much smaller than corporate America, where the recognition has to come from an entirely different business, but they don't see you every day. And so
Right.
I wonder if that's maybe where that comes from.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. It's one thing. I try to, obviously we always want to reward and recognize our own employees. Um, and it's nice to get together with peers at trade shows or at meetings, because then we can sit down and talk about how our business is going. Or I'm on a couple of other calls too, marketing calls, like marketing masterminds, where we get together, and it's always good to talk with someone that is in a similar position that you're in as far as leadership goes.
There's power in community. Wherever people find that sense of community, of peers that they they understand the struggles you're going through, they can recognize the good things that you're doing, they can help push you further along. That sense of community, any leader can struggle to find that, especially the business owner, because you can't necessarily vent to or complain to an employee. We can,
Right.
in a business, we can commiserate and vent sideways or up, but we can never do it down. And when you're the owner, everyone's down the org chart, and so it can feel lonely at times. But having, wherever people can find it, a sense of community and camaraderie of someone else who gets it, and you can confide in them, and they can give you an attaboy, you can give it to them, recognize what they're doing well. There's a lot of power in that. And if you look back on, let's just focus on, since you've owned zero gravity specifically, is there an accomplishment or something that went well that when it happened at the time you didn't really give yourself a whole lot of credit or you didn't really recognize it, but as years have passed, when you look back on that time and you reflect on it, you realize that was a much bigger win than you gave it credit for when you were going through it? Is there anything that jumps out in your mind as something that was great, but it was just another day, and now you reflect, you're like, yeah, that was actually really great.
Yeah, I'll have to go back to COVID at the skating rink. And this is a really interesting story that as I think back on it now, I'm like, damn, that was actually really, really cool. Um, there was a, if you remember back then, there was always a push and focus on they call them frontline, or not necessarily first responders, but the people that had to go to work. So at the skating rink, we had a hospital about a half a mile up the road from the rink. And I wanted to make sure that I kept my top people at the rink employed because we were shut down twice here in Minnesota. So what we did, and it was over the winter time, I actually created a portal on our website where we could have customers buy pizzas. And what we would do is we would make those and send them over to the hospital that evening. And then we would actually we took it a step further. And when they bought the pizzas, there was a message that they could put. So we put basically a thank you card. And within a matter of 6 weeks, we sold over 1,200 pizzas. I mean, it was amazing. And I wasn't really looking for it, but the local news stations picked up on it. I did a post like on LinkedIn that went viral and got contacted by CNN to do it. And at the end of the day, that felt really good. I mean, the hospital, we were delivering to all aspects. At first, it was the ER and the ambulance crew, but then eventually they're going to get sick of seeing pizza every single night of the week. So we started delivering to other spots of the hospital. But looking back on that, I think that was probably one of the most single coolest things that we did. And
What
it
I lo-
generated some revenue for us too.
One of the things that I really like about that story is the entire core of it was about helping somebody else.
Yeah.
You didn't do that because you wanted the coverage. You didn't do that because you wanted the promotion. You recognized, hey, here's a way that our community can help and I'm pretty sure you were probably looking for the word essential employees at the
That's
hospitals.
exactly what it was. Essential employees.
Here's a way we can help the essential employees, the ones who are, I mean, when we talk about getting burnt out and overworked, anyone who worked in a hospital during that time, it was, from everything that I can see, kind of bananas at times. And it was a way for you to be able to contribute and give back. And I think that's such an interesting and great example of something that you can do, whether you're in this entertainment industry and in a local business, whether you were an employee at the time or that you own, that doesn't happen the same way in corporate America. And even if it does, it's more detached. Like, there's this thing way over there on the other side of the country that maybe we helped with, something like that, but this is in your community. You got to see the results of the work and the ideas that you and your team had, and how that kind of coalesced into a meaningful impact at the hospital.
Yeah, some of the notes that I mean, that's what made it so special is the notes that were coming from these families to these employees, to these doctors and nurses. I mean, some of them were just heartwarming. The fact that, hey, my parents died. This is in dedication of someone that passed on. It was really cool. And as it grew towards the end, we were getting people from around the world buying pizzas. It was really cool.
So it went beyond your community and beyond your state. It was other countries that people were buying pizzas to deliver to local hospitals and organizations there.
Absolutely. Yeah. We ended up with 9 different countries where people bought pizzas to send them to our local hospital. It was really cool.
That's incredible. That's there's so many things that I love about our industry. There's a lot. The people in the industry are amazing. Everyone's willing to help one another out. The sense of community that people have. I mean, you literally create a place that people get to celebrate together and escape together and make memories together. That is cool. That is inherently awesome. And for a lot of people, you and me included, that sounds way cooler than insurance sales. Nothing against insurance sales if that's the route you want to take, but there's just something so meaningful and rewarding about the kind of stuff we get to do.
Absolutely. I couldn't imagine being in any other in any other career path. I mean, I have my friends from high school that I talk to on a regular basis, and they get literally pissed off when I tell them that I'm going to Las Vegas to the amusement expo to play arcade games. They're like, "How is this real life?" So you can't get, I mean, it can't get any better than that. I mean, this industry is home. There's no question.
I feel like you and I could have a keep talking for a long time about the things we appreciate about this industry and the things that you're doing in your business. And I want to be respectful of your time and make sure that we can wrap up here. And where I want to end this is the people that are listening or watching this podcast. Maybe they're an owner, maybe they're a manager, maybe they're an individual contributor. They can still be leaders even if they don't have the title. You, Ed, in the position that you're in and the experience that you have, what is one recommended action that you think our listeners could take today in order to become a better leader in their organization? What is one step, one action, one skill to implement starting right away to help them become better leaders now?
I think if you're an owner, um, and you're looking at some point leaving the business, retiring, to take a look at your management staff, and I was one of those people to say, hey, if this is something that you would like to pursue as a career, if this is something that you would like to do, give that person a shot. I mean, that's how I started in the industry. I started as an employee. So I started as a DJ, which probably explains a lot with my mouth, but and I just wanted a shot and to try to be successful myself. Or if you are that manager or are that operator working for someone, don't be afraid to ask about the future. And if it's something that you really want to do, um, and don't stay. I think part of sometimes I feel like I wasn't aggressive enough to get into the position that I am now. Part of it is because, as we're all creatures of habit, we don't like change. But at the same time, if it's something you want to pursue, jump at it.
That reminds me of a quote or a variation of it that if it feels lonely at the top, you did it wrong. And it's that reminder that we can bring people along with us. You are an example of someone
Absolutely.
bringing you along and giving you a shot and giving you more responsibility and letting you. And then now you're in this position you're in now, and that you can pass that along to others, and the listeners here can help pass that along. So, Ed, thanks so much for sharing some of your stories and joining us here on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Danny. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And thank you, all of you, for watching and listening. If there's anyone you know that would enjoy this episode and get some value out of it, send this along to them. Now go out there, take action in your business, and become the leader that your team needs you to be.